Hello, today here I'm going to talk about a new computer I recently purchased in January, and I went ahead and decided to buy the Microsoft Pro Surface 3. Now, just started 2017, I believe this came out 2 years ago, and the question might be how come you didn't, buy the Microsoft Surface 4, and the answer to that is simply cost. Before what I had was a MacBook Pro. It was a 2009. I bought, basically right when I was kind of entering college and I wanted a really nice computer. It's 2017 now and that computer is really outdated, but, it lasted me a really long time. And so, I was looking for a computer that would do, the job, and also be something a little bit different because my MacBook Pro, it still works and it's still perfectly fine. So I did a lot of research and looking around, and what I found kind of was that, Microsoft services, like, they're really expensive and there's a lot of like cheap kind of copies out there, but I kind of wanted the real thing. So what I ended up doing is I looked on Microsoft's website, I looked on, all these different like places like Amazon to try and find it would be the best for me. And I really wanted an i5 or, a processor that could, quote, jump up to an i5, so it would be, pretty quick. And then I also needed a PC for my class. So this is, what I went for. I ended up buying the tablet part here off of Craigslist for $350. The guy was asking $400, so I got it for $350. And it's really small and light, and I had to wait about a week because I ended up buying the keyboard part off of Amazon used for $75. I figured if I bought it used off Amazon for $75, I could use their return policy if it was in poor condition. Most of the used ones I would be careful at looking at because they're easy to wreck. I think if someone just sat on it or had an issue, or a lot of the ones on Craigslist just look way too worn out. I like the fact that you could remove this though in case you ever did need to replace it, and this is the Surface Pro 4 keyboard. It's got the bigger trackpad, which I thought would be nicer, and then the keys are a little bit more spaced out and feel a little bit more like my Mac keys. And then the Surface itself, right, basically, as you probably know from watching other videos, you have one card slot here, and then you have, the power is right here, which has like a dock for portable or expandability, which is really expensive. You get one USB, and then you get, what's basically just, the projection out, if you're doing anything like that. So this is the 128 gigabyte model. It came with Windows 8, but the guy who I bought it from upgraded it to Windows 10. I'd recommend making sure that you buy it from someone who's semi-reputable, as in like, they're not super sketchy on Craigslist there, because it was taking a risk. But the fact was the Surface Pro 4 at Costco with the bundle was like $950, or like, with tax, it came out to be about that amount. And then so $75 for this, $350 for this, so $425. I just figured it was worth the risk and it made sense. Now it's really light weight, and it's about the same size as the MacBook Air. I want to say when you kind of like put them next to one another. And I really like the tablet functions of it, but the fact is I really don't use them that much. When I think about it, like, I like it for reading in bed, for example, and I really like that it has the kickstand, and when I am like sitting down and reading on it, I really got used to that, just having it on my lap. And people kind of complain about that, but I liked it because it took the heat of the computer off of my lap and just kind of kept it cool. I had to look up online about Windows 10 to make sure that I got rid of a lot of the privacy stuff, because that was just things that were like sucking my battery power. Like when I first got it and then I went to class, right, and I was writing notes, the power went out in like, an hour and a half, and I was like really disappointed. But then, I looked around and was reading online and figured out kind of what was wrong. So a couple things to think about. One of the reasons why this is so great for college and why I like it so much is because of the pen. The pen right here came with it. And so the thing is though, so it uses a it's a quadruple A battery in there, and then it has like, it's 2 or 3 little kind of like watch batteries those watch batteries are really hard to find, and you got to make sure you buy the right one. I accidentally bought the wrong one 2 or 3 times off of Amazon, and then I don't really use the clicker function that much. When you hold down the power though, there's like a little light in there that will turn on, so if you go to test one out, you can see if it still works. But the pen is huge, and I just keep this in my backpack, and then when it comes to writing notes on OneNote, it's great because, you know, I type all my notes, I type them way faster than I could ever write the notes, and then when I need to draw, I can draw on it. Perfect for that. That's why I bought it. You know, it was really worth it for that in a way, and then also just being so much smaller. A couple of the positives I didn't realize when I bought it was the power adapter. So this power adapter is super light and nimble. Like, you know, it just throw it right in your bag, no problem. I wanted the one that, so the newer one has like a USB-C, I think, for the power, possibly. But I read online that basically it takes forever to charge, so, you know, I kind of wanted more, because I'd rather have like quicker power and faster power than something I can potentially charge anywhere if it doesn't charge very fast. And I think keep this thing plugged in all the time. So a clear disadvantage though with these computers compared to my MacBook Pro here, because, oh, by the way, the MacBook Pro had like a massive power adapter, but, you know, I can kind of hold them up, you know, together, and you might be able to kind of see like a little bit of the difference there. And one of them just kind of feels like a light book, and then the other one is just like super heavy in weight. But the reason why I like this 13-inch so much for so many years was because of the back. And the back here like has these screws where you can pull this off, and so I upgraded to solid state drive. I upgraded the RAM, which was so easy to do, you know, back in the day. And you know, it lasted me for another 4+ years, and I also had to replace the battery. I think I replaced this battery twice. And you know, batteries just go bad. The more you recharge them, that's one of the things that's going to happen. So, you know, the new MacBook Pros, the super small, thin bodies, I've kind of, you know, I understand that with this you have the same disadvantage, which is that it looks nice, but, you know, I watched videos of people taking the screen off, you know, to see like what it would be like to try and upgrade some parts to this, and, you know, I'd rather just not even take the risk, because like popping this off, someone already broke like the screen when trying to do it. Maybe if I take it to professional, but that's still really iffy, and Microsoft kind of makes it clear that they don't want you to do that. Like, they charge you as much for a battery as you know, like as to buy a new one, basically. So you know, talking in like kind of just technical terms here for a quick sec, it's like the useful life for one of these things is, you know, can be pretty long depending, and there's a lot of people out there who buy them and it's not what they're looking for. If you know that that's what you want, it's going to be a good solid buy. You know, there's nothing really that went wrong with it or horribly wrong that I don't like. It's got some bugs. Sometimes the keyboard stops working. Very easy. You just go and delete the driver. It automatically installs a new one when you restart it. I bring a mouse to class. You kind of need a mouse with something this small. It's way easier. And then especially when clicking on really small things when your finger isn't going to work either. And then I also bought, you know, a standard just like USB like splitter off Amazon, which is like a must for one of these. And then I think I'm going to get a hard drive pretty soon, just as like external storage when I need it. But you know, the expandable card and everything else works out well. But what I was going to say is there's a lot of people who bought these who don't want them or don't use them, or they thought they would be great and it's not for them and they want to let go of it on Craigslist or something, and you can pick it up for almost half price. It's only been like 1.5 years later. So I'm planning on using this for at least another, you know, 3-4 more years, and to see what happens. I still have my MacBook Pro. It's basically being used as a desktop, but after you go for something with like more power, and I really wouldn't go, I would go for the i5 if I could, because the i7 just seems like it's too expensive, and I'd rather just have a desktop at that point to do more powerful things, and you know, you have battery issues there. So it's a whole back and forth type of thing, but I feel like the $425 for this particular one was a great deal. The one, I think it's just called the Surface Pro. No, it's just called the Surface 4. No, it's just called the Microsoft Surface, the lower quality one compared to the Pro 3. So it was like newer, but they didn't include the pen with it. You know, I was really looking at that one. It has a not as good processor, so I'm really glad I went with the older one and this one instead of that one, because the processing power is huge and it's really important.